Hello everyone and welcome to Act 1 Scene 5 of Macbeth, one of the best scenes in the whole play and the scene that introduces us to the fantastic character of Lady Macbeth. The first thing I think you should do is watch two productions of this scene. The first link will take you to a production where I think we have the whole scene in that and it's a stunning performance. The second one takes a more of a unusual artistic manga-like interpretation of it. So click on both links and watch both versions of the scene. When you've done that, write your 20-word summary of the scene. Then press play here and we will continue. Okay, so the play opens with Lady Macbeth reading a letter from her husband Macbeth. And the first time we meet Lady Macbeth, she's not speaking her own words, she's reading the words of her husband. And I think that's quite interesting for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's interesting on a level of power. Lady Macbeth is actually nameless, isn't she? She doesn't have a name herself. She has her husband's name. She is Lady Macbeth. This is really indicative of the patriarchy of the time, a patriarchal environment, a patriarchal society, whereby men held all the power and women, wives and daughters were the possessions, were the belongings to these powerful men. So here when we first see Lady Macbeth, she's not speaking her own words, it's her husband's words, which may suggest that she too is somehow weak within this. That, of course, will not be the case for the rest of the scene, although it may be more interesting later on. The second thing it reveals is the trust between the Macbeths. What Macbeth is writing down in this letter is very, very dangerous. It could see Macbeth's ruin if people read this letter, but he has the complete trust in his wife and the faith that she will be able to come up with a plan based on what he's thinking about. The third thing that I think is useful is to consider the structural parallels or cyclical structures of this play. The play begins, though the first time we see Lady Macbeth anyway, she's on her own reading this letter. By the end of the play, she's completely mad and she's left alone. In many versions of this, they actually have her rereading bits from the letter in many productions. So she begins with the letter and ends with the letter. By the way, she begins alone and ends alone. Unfortunately, as she begins as someone certain, confident and powerful, she ends as someone completely broken by her experiences and her actions. Broken as a result of guilt, but I would say as well, broken as a result of her lack of power. Her lack of power over her husband, who pretty much puts her to one side. He marginalises her as soon as he becomes king, marginalises her, puts her to one side. And also her lack of power over the spirits, which I will come on to soon. Okay, first impressions then of Lady Macbeth. She is strong and she is manipulative. I want you to have a look at this passage. I want you to read this bit again and analyse how Lady Macbeth is presented as both strong and manipulative. Pick one quotation that displays strength and one quotation that displays manipulation. Press pause here and do that and then come back to me. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to talk about two quotations I would focus on here. And the first quotation I would focus on for strength is the one which he says, "Yet do I fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way." She's implying there is a weakness in her husband's nature, a softness, a gentleness, possibly a femininity. Milk is, of course, something delivered by women, isn't it? So this milk could be a reference to the weakness within Macbeth that she thinks he needs to get rid of, or she needs to help him get rid of in order for him to be strong enough. So through saying this, she's implying her own strength is probably greater than his. Quote for manipulation, I would choose, "Hie thee hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear." And this idea of pouring spirits into his ear suggests almost a sense of aural poisoning, a poisoning of what Macbeth can actually hear, that she's literally going to drip these evil thoughts into his ear and therefore into his brain. This suggests something witch-like about Lady Macbeth, that she has the ability to control people through her words, that there's something dangerous about her. Now, the idea of Lady Macbeth as a witch is, I'm sure, something many of you have thought about already, and it's further reinforced by this particular scene here. We're going to do a bit of close analysis of this now from the Raven himself, his horse. I'm not going to do a reading because I would just be an insult to the two wonderful actors you heard earlier delivering that scene. I want to focus, though, on Shakespeare's use of methods, and I've got 5 methods there on the right-hand side that I would like you to make notes about. The first one, animal imagery, only used once, but we've spoken before about the importance of animals. The animal used here, the raven himself, is hoarse, meaning the raven has been shouting so much its throat is actually hurting here. Ravens are symbols of death. They are birds associated with death, and the audience will be well aware of that association. Repetition and imperatives we're going to put together. You know what repetition is. Imperatives are commands. We covered that in a previous lesson, but if you've forgotten, imperatives are commands. Now let's look at the phrase Lady Macbeth keeps using to the spirits. She says on line 3, "Come, you spirits." Halfway down, "Come to my woman's breasts." 3 lines further, "Come, thick night." She is commanding the spirits to come to her, to change her, to transform her into something more evil, something more dangerous, something that's capable of killing the king and getting the crown for her husband. She needs to transform, though, because at the moment she's just feminine. Let's look at the body parts she goes through. She needs the transformation to go from, line 5, the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. She asks to make thick my blood, stop up the access and passage to remorse, to come to my woman's breasts. She wants her whole body consumed by this evil to enable her to perform evil actions. And as things become more sinister and more evil, a semantic field of darkness enters the scene. Come, thick night, dunnest smoke of hell, blanket of the dark. Lady Macbeth is imploring the spirits to come to her and to demand to give her the ability to be truly evil in order to fulfill her ambitions. How then does she go from this to this by the end of the play? Well, I think the answer lies in the answer from the spirits. I don't think the spirits answer Lady Macbeth. She asks for all of these things, but there is no sense that the spirits answer her. And the very fact she needs the spirits to unsex her, to fill her from the crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty, tells us she isn't already filled from head to toe with cruelty. She doesn't have enough evil in her ultimately, and that's what will lead to her being actually destroyed by the end of the play. Her gentleness, her femininity, and the fact that she's trying to subvert the rules where men are in command. Let's look, though, at her control over her husband, because she does have control over her husband. And 3 things I want to focus on here, as you can see in the red box. Again, the use of the animal imagery, and also antithesis here as well. To look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. A serpent, to an audience of the time, is an association with the devil. You will know the story of the Garden of Eden and how Satan spoke to Adam and Eve in the form of a snake and tempted them, which led to the fall of mankind. So serpents are associated with great evil. Lady Macbeth wants him to appear innocent, like a beautiful flower, as she views herself, but to be the evil serpent under it. Little does she know, that's actually going to become second nature for Macbeth. Being the serpent will be easy for him once he's become king, if not now. There is also the final line of this scene I think is interesting. She ends with an imperative, "Leave all the rest to me," another command. Lady Macbeth takes complete control of the situation. But if we were to backtrack a bit to the start of the scene, it begins with Lady Macbeth reading Macbeth's letter. Why did he write to her in the first place? Was it because he knew her nature? He knew her nature and that she would set about plotting and scheming a murder that he did not have the courage himself to actually scheme and plot. Perhaps he knows her nature, but perhaps she doesn't quite know his nature. If we were to go back and read what she says about him, when she says, "Yet do I fear thy nature, it is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way." Well, I'm not sure she understands her husband very well at all. We've seen in the previous scene Macbeth planning murder himself. So perhaps it's Lady Macbeth's lack of self-knowledge, Lady Macbeth's lack of power, and Lady Macbeth's lack of knowledge of her husband's true behaviour, of the things that lead to madness, just as much as the guilt does. I think it's really useful here to if you got the chance to click on this link and watch the excellent actress Niamh Cusack explain her thoughts on playing Act 1, Scene 5. This is in an award-winning production, and we have versions of this production we'll be sharing with you. Your teacher might have already shared it with you. It's the digital theatre production with Christopher Eccleston in the lead role of Macbeth. It's terrific. Write down 3 to 5 interesting things this clip reveals about Lady Macbeth, and then evaluate your thoughts. Is Lady Macbeth an evil character? I think you can explore the yes and the no to that. We'd like to write for 15 minutes, and if you include quotations, that would be brilliant. Okay. I hope you've got some good ideas from that. Food for thought on one of Shakespeare's best characters, and for me, his most interesting female character. If you've got, when you've done your work, send it to your teachers through Teams or email. If you've got any questions for me from this presentation, please email me directly. Okay, that's everything from me. In the next scene, it's a short scene, Act 1, Scene 6, where Lady Macbeth is really going to act like the innocent flower, and poor King Duncan is going to remain incredibly stupid. See you then.